Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Moa, aka Swedish Whiskey Girl, and today we're trying some whiskey and chocolate. First of all, of course, massive thank you to Chocisky for sending me these chocolate samples. We are going to focus on the chocolate today, and I also have chosen 4 whiskies here from each region to try alongside and just have a little look and see what it tastes like. So Chokiski, I think that's how you pronounce it. It's chocolate for whiskey. Was started by 2 friends, Peter Jones and Stuart Baxter, who lives in the Highlands here in Scotland, and just had this idea that they wanted to pair whiskies with chocolate, and they wanted quite a good alternative for it that was more cost effective and enjoyable. So what I have in front of me here are 4 different chocolates, one for Lowland whiskies, one for Speyside, one for Highlands, and one for Islay whiskies. So the whiskies that we're going to try alongside is the Auchentoshan Classic. I haven't done a review of this one yet because this is one of their kind of older expressions that isn't really around anymore. Then I also have Glenmorangie Port, which is of course our Speyside. Our Highlands one is the Glenmorangie La Santa, which is a 12-year-old with a little bit of influence from sherry cask maturation. And then our Islay whiskies, of course, are the big Aloha. I don't have that many Lowlands or Islay whiskies on my shelves, but I'm gonna play around with it. But this is of course up to your personal preference, what you think goes too well together. And we're gonna go in the order of Lowlands, Speyside, Highland and Islay. But they're all a little bit different, so I'm going to have a little look on these handy little cards that come with each set, just to have a look what they are. So the Lowland chocolate is 40% cocoa content and hints of red fruits and caramel. The Speyside one, did I see where this was from? It was from Ghana, the Lowland one. The Speyside one is from Mexico, containing 66% cocoa content with subtle gingerbread notes. And then we have Highlands, which is a whiskey from Sao Tome. 70% cocoa content, intense red fruits and licorice notes. We'll see if that will go well with our sherry influence. And the Islay one is a chocolate from Venezuela with 72% cocoa content with woody, wine and olive notes. Sounds wonderful. And they come in these little candy containers. I think it's about 40 to 50 discs in each, about 50 grams. And they also have, I'm going to have to zoom in so you can see it, these handy little discs. I don't know if you can see them there, which of course are a great size if you just want to have a little nibble, because sometimes you get too much chocolate or you just kind of want to balance them out. That's the thing with when you're pairing things together with whiskey. You of course want to find the contrast or complement. And yeah, I think it's great to have those little sizes. But I'm going to pour myself a dram of the Auchentoshan. So it's called a Classic. Auchentoshan's a Lowlands distillery. It is triple distilled, which of course makes it a little bit different from most other Scotch whiskies. And it's been matured in bourbon oak casks, so this is quite similar to their new American oak expression. And what I like to do is start with the whiskey, then have the chocolate, and then go back to the whiskey to do it that way. It's so different. It's a sweetness, like a candy sweetness, like wine gum sweetness. It's quite light. Let's have a little sip. Very light on the palate. The influence of the bourbon casks is lovely. It reminds me more of an Irish whiskey because of this kind of vanilla, heavy like vanilla fruitiness, which is very light, but still a big flavour. So let's have a little taste of chocolate from Ghana, and this is the one with the lowest cocoa content. The chocolate is quite sweet and quite creamy. It reminds me kind of a milk chocolate. And the creaminess of the chocolate kind of cuts through. the spirit. So what you're left with is less of the alcohol influence and more of this kind of fresh fruitiness, which is really nice. Because this creaminess is something that I could imagine going really well with maybe something like Ilsa Bay as well, because the creaminess will make, I think, impact the peat quite a lot and make that a very much of a different experience. But yeah, I think because the chocolate's quite sweet, I didn't know if it would go with the sweetness in the whiskey, but the whiskey is more fresh, so I do think they go quite well together. Next up is our Glenmorangie Port. And the reason I wanted to try and choose a few different whiskies, but also quite with a good character for the region. So Glenmorangie Port I chose because of the port influence, and I think with something like darker chocolate, the dark chocolate goes really well with like an influence of maybe a sherry cask or a port cask. Of course can go wonderfully well with bourbon cask as well, but to me it just seems to make sense. So we're gonna have a little bit of a sip of the whiskey. Like blackberry notes, quite fruity, like very space lady fruity, which is lovely. Got quite a big one here, so I'll bite that one off. A lovely dark chocolate taste to it. Quite fruity chocolate, I would say. That really goes super well together. The fruitiness of the chocolate and the fruitiness of the whiskey come together. It makes the Glenmorangie more blackberries, I would say. And it's interesting, I tried these, like one of each from the chocolates beforehand, so I could choose and pair the whiskies. But you don't really know what they're going to be like until you try them together. But that was a really nice one. I think that's a good example of something that is complementing. So you have similar flavors in both and they just come together. Next up is our La Santa from Glenmorangie up in the Highlands. And in the Highlands you of course also have, well, you have the islands, but the Chokiski company, they also do others. So they do one specifically for the islands. They also do one for Welsh whiskey and for Japanese. So let's see if I can find one here. Start by having a little taste of the whiskey. A very nice darker fruitiness, that kind of sherry influence. But like creamy sherry, quite light and fresh in a way. Like cherries and raisins. This is one of those kind of sherry influenced whiskies that I think are still so fruity and they're very easy to like. This chocolate feels slightly more bitter, maybe a little bit more herby. It's a very nice flavour to it, but it leaves my mouth slightly more dry than the others. And it brings out the sweetness in the whiskey really well. It's almost like it just like turns up the volume on the sweetness and the fresh notes, and just makes my mouth feel so like, it just kickstarts the saliva production because it just feels so juicy in a way. Not juicy, more fresh. So that difference from the 66% on the Speyside chocolate to the 70% in the Highland one kind of definitely had a big difference. And what I really like about these is that you can definitely taste the difference in the chocolates. Because sometimes you just try chocolate and you're like, oh, this tastes like chocolate. But these definitely have characteristics. And we're on to Islay. Islay or Ardbeg Anno, which is a whiskey that is peated, heavily peated, from the Isle of Islay, which is known for quite heavily peated whiskies, but also have other whiskies of course as well. And it's a non-age statement whiskey, but it matured in both bourbon and sherry casks, so it has a kind of blend of both. And for the Islay whiskies, we have the highest cocoa content of 72%. So this is quite an oily, quite yummy, quite bonfire, but it's heavy and it's quite robust. But it also has a sweetness to it, which is like a heavy sea breeze. So it's like a sea breeze that you get and you can feel that there's a storm coming. I think the oiliness of the Ardbeg makes them so approachable if you like heavily peated whiskies. Such a lovely oily bonfire smoke. It is nice because it's, can you go wrong with whiskey and chocolate? I mean, of course you can with really weird flavours, but I love whiskey chocolate. When I tasted it, I was a bit hesitant because I was like, oh, it's quite tanniny. Like it has a bitterness to it because of the high cocoa content. But then trying the Ardbeg, because of the chocolate coating your palate, it does change the character of the whiskey, which in itself is just super fascinating. It makes the Ardbeg more fruity, I would say. It would be so interesting just to kind of cross-try them. And of course the regions is more of a kind of guideline to be like, this is what the regions tend to be, this is kind of how you compare them. And it's a good idea to have it that way because it does simplify things instead of going, here's a chocolate with these aromas. Because then I think it would be more difficult to kind of approach the kind of pairing aspect. But if you have like, here's whiskey for Speyside, you know that Speyside tends to be fruitier, and then the chocolate happens to be quite fruity in my opinion, and then you pair them together and you can see how well it goes, and then you can start looking for other fruity whiskies, because as you know, there's fruity whiskies on Islay, there's fruity whiskies internationally, there's, yeah, so it's, the possibilities are endless. It's just trying to pick out what it is that works so well for you and what you like and how to pair them. And it is fascinating to pair whiskey with both food and of course chocolate is one of my favourites, cheese is another one as well. So very interesting, and once more thank you to Chocisky for letting me try these. I will definitely be enjoying them alongside various different pairings. And I would of course love to hear if you have tried Chokiski, because the first time I came across them was that I started seeing them on social media. A lot of people trying them, liking them, so it seems to me that there's a lot of you out there that are enjoying them as well. Do you have a favourite region? Do you have a favourite chocolate from them perhaps? Please let me know in the comments below. And of course, if you like what I'm doing here on YouTube and my other social channels, I would be absolutely over the moon if you consider using my affiliate links with either Master Malt, the Whisky Exchange or the Scotch Malt Whisky Society. All that information is in the description below, as well as links to my website, my Teespring shop, my Instagram and my Patreon. And speaking of, thank you once more to my wonderful supporters on Patreon. It means so much to me that you want to continue to support me on my whisky journey. But of course, I hope you've all had an absolutely wonderful day. Slán Skål.